Hi, this is Drew Sanders with CoachesAid.com with Winning the Mind Game. You're the coach. It's before the game. What are you going to bring to the game? What's your game plan? Are you going to have everybody ready to play? Do you know who's going to be there? Do you know who you're playing? Do you know how everybody's feeling? Did someone get a tummy ache? All these things go through your mind. We think there are a couple things that the best coaches in youth sports do. They see the game in the context of those players over the course of the next several years. They understand the imperatives that they're there for both winning the game and diversifying the ball. So we think there are 4 things that you should think about before every game as a youth sports coach. The first thing you'd like to see your players play with energy, with spirit. Nothing's worse than watching a group of players play with their head downs. The second thing is you'd love them to come and execute a well-scripted play, or that they play with just precision. The third thing you're looking for is you're looking to diversify the ball as much as possible. Get everybody engaged in the game. And finally, the fourth thing is, if you're lucky enough to have them playing with spirit and executing well and diversifying the ball, see if you can put them in a situation where they get to a failure point, where they get to a spot where they actually hit the edge of their development. That'll give you something to work on next week in practice. No one wins anything winning 100-0, keeping the same 5 players on the court. Have them work on their left hand. Have them do an extra pass. Get the person who plays center to play forward. Get your point guard to play off guard. There are a myriad of things you can do to keep those boys and girls playing with spirit. We'll be back at halftime to discuss the other things you should be thinking about now that you've seen them play in the game. Hi, this is Drew Sanders with CoachesAid.com with your Winning the Mind Game series. Today we're going to talk about what the coach should be thinking at halftime. So you've just played half the game. Your players are a little spent. Here's the first thing you should probably do. However long your halftime is, take the first 20% and don't do anything. Let your players cool down. Let them get a drink of water. Let them talk amongst themselves. Take that 20%, have a quick chat with your coaches, and then refocus your players. It's really key to let them come down from the competition. Now that you have their attention, the next thing you should do is you should get them to talk about their experience on the field. You weren't on the field. You watched the game. You prepared for the game. You have an idea of what's going on, but it's a great way to get them engaged to talk and learn how to express their feelings, to say what they thought was going on. Now that you've got them talking, think if there's a technical issue. Is there 1 or 2 things you'd really like them to focus on? That's great. But now you quickly want to move on and change the mindset of the second half. What should you be focusing on? Is there a greater goal that you're looking for here? You may really want to win the game. You may really want to develop a player. We're okay with either solution, but what you should have is a way to reset the expectation for the second half, to help them see things that they can accomplish even if they're up by a lot or down by a lot. Finally, we'd like to give you what we call the John Candy moment. In the final drive of a Super Bowl, Joe Montana turned to Harris Barton and said, "Hey H, is that John Candy in the first row?" Harris Barton has been quoted as saying that was the moment he knew they were going to win the game, because Joe Montana was cool. He was ready to go. So in that scenario for you, maybe you have a clever way, a new play to try to keep it fresh. But send your players back on the field with that assurance that everything's going to be okay. And sometimes it just takes you being a little clever. And if you combine all those things in a halftime, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you have your players back on the court, ready to go. And that's how champions think. We'll be back at the end of the game to talk how you can sum up everything you had going on in this game to get your players ready to compete and go to practice. Hi, this is Drew Sanders with CoachesAid.com with your Winning the Mind Game series. Today we're going to talk about what the coach should be thinking about at the end of the game. You've just finished the game. Everyone's spent a lot of energy. You've probably spent a lot of energy as well. You have the parents in the stands, you have your assistant coaches, and you have your players who you've given a lot of energy and time to, and you want them to do well. So what are some of the things you should think about at that moment? The first thing is you should have been planning for this moment the night before. Every coach should have a pre, during, and post mindset game plan for that game. Just a couple of things that you know you're going to say regardless of how the competition goes. This will help you stay calm in the midst of maybe being emotional about the outcome of the game. You should also let your players, just like you did at halftime, take a couple of minutes to cool down. Get their water, get their bags, but always honor the rhythm of the season by having a meeting. The first thing you should do is to let them talk a little bit about what they saw. Get them to talk about it, to communicate it. It's very important for your players to learn how to articulate what they're feeling, even when they're a little spent. The next thing you want to do is you want to honor their effort. You want to honor their effort by praising the hustle that you saw. A great way to go further on that score is to have one of your assistant coaches not just track stats of who scored what and who did this or that was well and would go in some sort of box score, but to track the hustle plays. Do you have your assistant coach getting ready to track who had that extra effort on the ground ball in lacrosse, who dove on the ground in basketball? Those are the things that when you honor their effort at the end of the game, regardless of the outcome of the score, you've built them back up. You now at this point should probably bring up a few things that you'd like to focus on as a unit. Point to the things that you think they can do better, something you want them to take home and think about before practice. And finally, talk about honoring the game, honoring the competition. Help them understand that they may have just won the game, but the people they beat aren't losers. If they lost the game, the people that beat them, they're not really better than them. They played the game better at that point. There's always a way for you to bring in the context of life and the greater opportunities these kids have playing athletics, and that post-game meeting is the perfect time to do it. So you had a plan before the game, you had a plan for during the game, and now here was your plan for after the game. As you continually do this as a coach, you'll be thinking right, you'll be helping position your players in the right way, and we think it'll help you get to that champion's mindset. Thanks so much.